Look at your stomach for a moment and ask yourself what you are really seeing. Is it a hard, rounded belly that pushes outward like a drum, a soft lower pouch that sits over the waist, or a heavier belly that hangs and will not budge? Most people call all of it belly fat. That is the first mistake, because one of these belly types might not even be fat. These shapes can look similar from the outside, but they often come from very different problems on the inside. That is why so many people stay stuck. They use one solution for every belly, then wonder why nothing changes. But if the cause is different, the fix has to be different too. Before you blame your willpower, understand the type of belly you are actually dealing with. The first type is often the most alarming because it does not look like ordinary fat. Picture someone with slim arms, lean legs, and not much fat anywhere else, yet the stomach pushes outward in a hard, rounded shape. It sits high, feels tight, and looks almost inflated. If you pressed on it, it would feel firm and stretched, not soft and loose like typical belly fat. And this is the part most people get completely wrong. In some cases, that belly is not just fat. It may be a sign that the liver is under serious stress. When the liver is healthy, blood moves through it the way it should. But when the liver becomes damaged and stiff, that flow starts to back up. Pressure builds, and fluid can begin collecting in the abdomen. So what looks like stubborn belly fat may partly be trapped fluid instead. That is also why this belly often looks different. It is higher, harder, and more tense than the soft belly most people think of as weight gain. If this is your belly, this is not just a weight problem. And that is why more cardio is not the answer. You cannot outrun a system that is struggling on the inside. If the liver is already under strain, the first step is to stop making that strain worse. Alcohol is the clearest problem here because it puts direct pressure on an organ that may already be overwhelmed. Processed fructose can do the same thing over time. Sweet drinks, packaged desserts, syrup-heavy foods, and hidden sugars may seem harmless in daily life, but repeated over and over, they can add up to real liver stress. Now here is what almost nobody talks about. Sometimes the damage does not come from one extreme habit. It comes from ordinary habits repeated for years. That is why the goal here is not just weight loss. It is liver relief. Some people also use targeted support for bile flow and liver protection. TUDCA is often used to help bile move more efficiently, which may reduce internal stagnation and stress on the liver. Tocotrienols are also discussed for their potential role in lowering oxidative stress and helping protect liver tissue. But this part matters. These are supportive tools, not a fix for serious liver disease. If your belly is hard, bloated, high, and out of proportion to the rest of your body, do not treat it like a normal fat loss issue. Get it checked. Blood work and an ultrasound matter more here than supplements. But not every enlarged belly comes from pressure and fluid. Some sit lower, feel softer, and follow a completely different hormonal pattern. If the first type feels hard, high, and pressurized, this one tells a very different story. This belly sits lower, feels softer, and tends to collect right above the waistband in a way that can feel almost impossible to get rid of. It does not feel tight like trapped pressure. It hangs lower, softer, and more stubborn, like a layer the body has decided to protect. This pattern shows up a lot in women, but it is not just a female issue. More and more men are dealing with the same kind of lower belly fat too. And here is the twist. Even if you eat clean, this can still happen. Because in this framework, the problem is not just calories. It is also the hormonal signals the body keeps getting every day. This is subcutaneous fat, the soft, pinchable kind that sits just under the skin and refuses to leave. And what makes it so frustrating is that the body may keep getting signals that push fat storage toward the lower belly and hips. A big part of that conversation is everyday chemical exposure. Hot plastic bottles, microwaved food containers, soft packaging, and constant low-level contact with hormone-like compounds may all be feeding the pattern. So this is not framed as random softness. It is framed as a hormonal shield. If that is the mechanism, then the answer is not to punish the body harder with more dieting. The smarter first step is to reduce the signals that may be telling the body to keep storing fat there in the first place. That means cutting down plastic exposure where you can, especially around heat and food. If the signal is part of the problem, the goal is simple: lower the signal. And this is where the strategy starts to shift. The next step is to support how the body handles estrogen, and that is where cruciferous vegetables come in. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, and similar vegetables are emphasized because they contain compounds linked to estrogen metabolism. So here, they are not just healthy side dishes. They are part of a more targeted hormonal strategy. But this part matters too: DIM and calcium D-glucarate. It is not enough to simply shift estrogen metabolism if the body is not also clearing those compounds efficiently. That is why DIM is often paired with calcium D-glucarate. DIM is used to help redirect estrogen processing, while calcium D-glucarate is used to support clearance, so the body is less likely to recycle what it should be getting rid of. That is the heart of the strategy with this second type. Reduce the hormonal noise, support better estrogen handling, and stop recreating the same lower belly pattern day after day. This is visceral fat, the deep belly fat that does the real damage. Unlike the soft layer you can pinch under the skin, this fat builds deep inside the body, wrapping itself around the organs in your core, the pancreas, the intestines, even the heart. It is the body's stress-built midsection, shaped over time by the combined force of cortisol and insulin. To understand why, start with cortisol. Cortisol is your survival hormone. It exists for emergencies. If you were being chased by a wild animal, cortisol would rise fast to flood your body with usable energy so you could run, fight, or survive. The problem is that the modern body often reacts to everyday pressure as if it were the same kind of threat. Your predator now is not a tiger in the bushes, but the mortgage, the unanswered messages, the toxic boss, the traffic jam, the bad sleep, and the constant feeling that your mind never gets to stand down. When cortisol stays high for too long, it stops acting like short-term help and starts acting like a desperate accountant looking for emergency cash. Instead of using the money already in the bank, it starts tearing apart the house. It strips muscle for fuel, turns that tissue into glucose, and dumps it into the bloodstream as if you are about to sprint for your life. But most people are not sprinting. They are sitting at a desk, stuck in traffic, answering emails, and feeling stressed without physically burning the energy their body just made available. So now the bloodstream is carrying more sugar than the body is using, and the pancreas reacts the way it always does. It releases insulin. Insulin is the storage hormone. It sees fuel that is not being used and starts packing it away. In this model, one of the places it stores it most aggressively is deep in the middle of the body, around the abdomen. That is why this belly is not just extra weight. It is a body breaking down muscle, flooding the blood with glucose, and storing that fuel around the middle. That is what makes this type so cruel. A person can actually be losing muscle while gaining belly at the same time. The legs shrink, the backside flattens, the body gets weaker, but the waist keeps thickening. It looks like simple weight gain from the outside, but the deeper story is a body being reshaped by stress. Poor sleep makes the whole cycle worse by keeping cortisol high, worsening glucose control, and making fat loss harder. It is not just that the person feels tired. The body begins acting like it is metabolically cornered. If this belly is being built by stress, then the first mistake is to pile on even more stress and call it discipline. That is why high-intensity interval training can backfire. If the system is already running hot, an all-out workout may act like gasoline on a fire. Yes, it burns calories, but it can also tell the body that the emergency is still going on. That is why lower-intensity movement is emphasized instead. Walking, hiking, and light rucking work better for this kind of body because they burn energy without setting off the same hormonal alarm. They tell the system that it is safe enough to stop hoarding. The next step is to reduce the constant storage signal. This is where intermittent fasting comes in. In this model, fasting is not about punishment. It is about giving insulin a chance to fall instead of staying elevated all day long. When you stop eating constantly, the body finally gets a window in which it is not being told to store every incoming calorie. That is also why this approach is often paired with lower carbohydrate intake. If cortisol is already helping create glucose from broken down tissue, then pouring more glucose into the system through constant carb-heavy eating only feeds the cycle. Lowering that input makes it easier for the body to stop storing and start using what is already there. The final step is to calm the chemistry driving the whole pattern. Adaptogens such as ashwagandha are often used here to help reduce cortisol load, while magnesium glycinate is brought in to support deeper, more stable sleep. Sleep is where the body finally gets to stop acting like it is under siege. And that is the real heart of this third type. The goal is not just to burn fat harder, it is to convince the body that the crisis is over. So before you blame yourself, take a closer look at what your body may actually be telling you. Because a hard belly, a soft lower belly, and a sagging stress belly may all look like the same problem from the outside, but they are not the same problem on the inside. And that is where so many people go wrong. They keep treating every belly like ordinary fat, then wonder why nothing works. Most people are not just struggling with belly fat. They are struggling with the wrong explanation. So when you look in the mirror, which one sounds most like you?